Chapter 15. Urban Terror Perfected. Urban sniping hits its stride. As Dean Myers pumped gas into his black Mazda Protege on October 9th, 2002, he probably shivered as it was cold, wet, and a little after 8 o'clock at night. The Sunoco gas station on Sudley Road in Manassas, Virginia, was located in a busy commercial area 1,000 meters from Route 66. People, cars, and businesses surrounded the Sunoco, and a police officer was nearby. Suddenly, a muffled boom was heard a split second before a .223 caliber rifle bullet hit Dean behind his left ear, killing him instantly. Amazingly, no one saw anything suspicious, and the police officer, who was briefly in the killer's sights himself, never saw a thing. Even when the shooter was pulled over just minutes later and briefly questioned by police, they were soon let go. How is this possible? A gunman could fire a high-powered rifle with dozens of potential witnesses nearby and escape undetected. How was it a police officer could be only yards away from the shooting and then the shooter himself be questioned but then escape? This was possible because Dean Myers was John Muhammad and Lee Malvo's 19th victim, and the two snipers had hit their killing stride. Muhammad and Malvo were planning and training for their sniper operation for months, and they were now putting their sniper theories into practice. During the course of their previous 18 killings, they had perfected their tactics, allowing them to evade a massive police dragnet for weeks. A closer look at their deadly methodology shows exactly how Muhammad and Malvo managed to shoot 23 people over a span of 8 months, from one end of the United States to the other, manipulating the urban terrain until they were ultimately captured, not because of a sophisticated law enforcement counter-sniper strategy, but because of the shooter's own mistakes. The sniper's goals. John Muhammad, born in 1960, was a deeply disturbed, violent man who was emotionally and mentally unstable. Muhammad was a Desert Storm veteran, a converted Muslim, a habitual liar obsessed with fitness, a studied con man, lost custody of his children to an ex-wife he hated, and, for a while, earned money smuggling illegal immigrants from Antigua into the United States. In 2000, Muhammad met a troubled young man by the name of Lee Boyd Malvo in Antigua, and unofficially adopted him as a second son. Malvo, the product of an absentee father and an irresponsible mother, quickly fell under Muhammad's strong personality, soon calling Muhammad Dad. Out of this unusual relationship of two troubled men, a sniper team was created. There's no telling when Muhammad actually sprung his idea for a murder campaign on the young Malvo. Regardless, the killing were Muhammad's idea, and Malvo was a willing tool to accomplish them. Most likely, the shootings were part of a larger plan to kill Muhammad's ex-wife, Mildred, who lived with her sister in Clinton, Maryland. Muhammad threatened to kill Mildred previously when she and Muhammad lived in Tacoma, Washington. She since had a spousal protection order issued against Muhammad. In fact, Muhammad and Malvo went to Mildred's house in Tacoma to kill her, but she already moved away to Maryland. Instead, they shot and killed the unlucky young woman who opened the front door. In Muhammad's plan, Mildred would have been just one of a score of victims who were shot at random by an unknown serial murderer. Mildred would have been the main target all along, and the other murders were just a smokescreen to cover up this fact. Ominously, Mildred actually saw Muhammad's car parked near her house in Maryland after the killing started. Local residents also saw the same car parked several houses down from where Mildred lived. If Muhammad did not plan to kill Mildred, why did he and Malvo travel all the way from Tacoma, Washington, to kill multiple persons within a mile of Mildred's house in Maryland? Another theory is Muhammad planned the killings to extort money from the U.S. government, since he did eventually demand $10 million from authorities if they wanted the killings to stop. An integral part of this extortion plan was creating terror among the local residents. After being captured, Malvo said the victims were chosen at random to cause maximum shock in order to spread fear. They wanted people to think anyone could be next. Hence, old men, women, and even school children were targeted for execution. Muhammad said he wanted to terrorize so much of the populace as to affect the local economy. If the local economy started to decline, he was sure the authorities would pay his ransom. Another theory blends several motives to answer the why of these systemic killings. Perhaps these killings were partially an outlet for Muhammad and Malvo's seething rage for their unhappy childhoods and their going-nowhere lives. Muhammad probably did plan to kill his ex-wife, but never got the opportunity during their killing spree. Muhammad probably did want to extort money from the authorities, if he could get it. It also appeared Muhammad had a subconscious desire to be caught, but was determined to kill as many people and humiliate as many law enforcement agencies as he could along the way until the murderous ride was over. Other possible reasons for the murders came to surface during Muhammad's trial in 2006 when Malvo publicly confessed what their motives were. First, Malvo heaped most of the blame on Muhammad, telling him in front of the court, "You took me into your house and made me a monster. You fed me, you clothed me, and you made me your child." Malvo said Muhammad hated America in part for being a slave state. He in fact hated all whites, and he planned to kill 6 whites a day for 30 days straight once their killing spree got underway. More specifically, Muhammad wanted to target pregnant white women, and at one time, according to Malvo had a pregnant white woman in his sights, but could not bring himself to pull the trigger. This mass killing of whites would just be the first stage of a multi-phase terror campaign. In the second stage, the 2 snipers would drive up Route 95 to Baltimore, Maryland, and gun down a policeman. When friends and family went to the officer's funeral, Muhammad would have a surprise waiting. As the grief-stricken mourners crowded around the deceased's grave, Muhammad planned to detonate an improvised explosive device, IED, in order to blow to smithereens those who came to pay their respects. Muhammad knew ambulances would quickly respond to this horrific attack, and he intended to compound the slaughter by blowing up the arriving ambulances with more IEDs. Malvo even admitted they planned to massacre a busload of school children, but Malvo fell asleep while on the lookout for an appropriate target at a gas station and missed the opportunity. Muhammad was far more ambitious, and his dreams went beyond merely executing white pregnant women, shooting up busloads of school children, and blowing up ambulances and crowds of grieving people. Once Muhammad conducted the first crop of killings, he intended to cross the border into Canada, escaping the United States law enforcement dragnet. Inside America's northern neighbor, he planned on recruiting and indoctrinating up to 140 young homeless men at a remote compound. There, Muhammad would instruct his new legion in the dark art of urban sniper terror, just like he had successfully done with the impressionable Malvo. With these 140 trained killers, Muhammad would send them across the border into America, where they would wreak havoc on all across America's cities. Even though Muhammad wanted to bleed the United States and get some payback for unspecified injustices committed against him, he would grant America a reprieve if the Bush administration paid him $10 million in ransom. The Grandiose plan, if it worked, could have inflicted hundreds of deaths on unsuspecting Americans far and wide, from Boston to Los Angeles, St. Petersburg to Portland. Men, women, and children would be picked off everywhere, dying from precisely placed headshots while they strolled on sidewalks, shopped in supermarkets, and lounged on their front porches. This plan also sounded like pure fantasy, the demented ranting of a delusional megalomaniac who was going to pay for the rent, electricity, and food at the compound. Assuming these urban guerrilla snipers would work in teams of 2, who was going to buy the 70 cars for them to drive around in? Where were the 70 sniper rifles going to come from? How was Muhammad going to communicate with these 70 separate teams? Where were these 70 teams going to get the money and credit cards from to pay for hotels, gas, and food? What happened when one of the teams got cold feet, went to the police, or were caught and interrogated and confessed, exposing the whole plan? Regardless of what their underlying logic was for the killings, at the time it was impossible to discern their true motives, making it difficult to identify and locate the shooters. After all, if the 2 simply drove to Muhammad's wife's house and shot her as she walked outside to her car, it would be obvious who the police would investigate first. Muhammad would have been placed under suspicion immediately and arrested in a matter of days, if not hours. Importantly, the extreme distance between where the killings took place and where Muhammad and Malvo lived disguised their motives. If the killings took place in Seattle or Antigua, Muhammad may have been looked at a lot earlier. Who would have guessed Muhammad and Malvo would drive across the entire country to kill people at random in Maryland? Actually, only one person guessed this, an acquaintance of Muhammad's who suspected him only after the victims started to stack up. Ultimately, the extreme distance between the shootings and the sniper's home acted as a giant investigative barrier. helping to disassociate the shooters from their crimes. Training for their mission. The way in which the two trained for their sniper campaign was a veritable how-to lesson for urban guerrilla snipers. Muhammad and Malvo trained in the open and without suspicion. The two often shot, quite legally, at the Tacoma Sportsman's Club, where they practiced marksmanship for hours upon hours, with Muhammad instructing the younger Malvo. The two also played the Xbox game Halo, a first-person shooter game that allows a person to practice tactics as well as the finer points of sniping. Video games were just another legal and expensive way to practice military tactics under the cover of just playing games. Muhammad also educated Malvo in sniper skills from a Navy SEAL sniper video he owned, receiving pre-recorded instruction from the special operations experts themselves. Another teaching method used was watching educational films like the movie Savior, which is about a mercenary sniper fighting in Bosnia. While the two future killers practiced the tactical aspects of shooting, they also led a healthy lifestyle. They worked out consistently and ate healthy. Muhammad, who benefited from 17 years in the Army National Guard and the active duty Army, was an avid shooter, often going to gun shows. Importantly, the sniper operation was not a fly-by-night event. No, Muhammad planned the killings at least several months beforehand and looked into a variety of ways to better kill people in an urban environment. For example, Muhammad tried to build his own sound suppressor for a rifle, but it did not work. By law, any person manufacturing a sound suppressor must register this device with the federal government. This law only works if the people building the silencer consent to follow it. Muhammad also asked a local gunsmith if he could modify a rifle with a barrel that could be unscrewed in the middle. This request revealed Muhammad did not know much about gunsmithing, as the barrel is the one place on a weapon you do not want to modify to make it shorter. The barrel may blow up at the point of connection, and it would adversely affect weapon accuracy. Regardless of Muhammad's gunsmithing skills, he knew what he wanted, a weapon which was quiet and could be broken down into something concealable. In short, he was looking for a weapon designed for urban sniping. Weapon of choice, the Bushmaster. Muhammad eventually selected a weapon that was, in many ways, ideal for their planned killings. A Bushmaster XM-15 rifle, .223 caliber, 5.56 millimeter, with a 16-inch barrel. The .223 Bushmaster, a near clone of the U.S. military's M4 rifle, fires an extremely flat shooting round capable of making accurate shots at man-sized targets out to 300 meters. The shots Muhammad and Malvo would be taking were at much closer ranges, some less than 50 meters. Their Bushmaster had a Bushnell holographic sight mounted on top. This sight was not telescopic and was not intended for long-distance shooting. It was designed for quickly acquiring close-in targets moving in low-light conditions. This description fit many of their eventual targets. A telescopic sight was also found in the car, but was probably not used often since most shots were at night and the distances from the shooters to their targets were so close. At these distances and under these conditions, a high-powered telescopic scope was irrelevant. Their particular Bushmaster came equipped with a collapsible stock. This adjustable stock allowed the shooter to extend the stock to fit the shooter's shoulder when firing. When the shooting was over, the ability to adjust the stock's length made the weapon easier to conceal both before and after the shot, and when transporting the weapon in a duffel bag. The final feature of their Bushmaster was a detachable Harris bipod. The bipod is often used by snipers because it allows the shooter to fire from a stable platform. The legs of the bipod are adjustable in length, so they can be adjusted to fit the shooter and their environment. When not in use, the legs fold up against the forward handguard of the weapon out all the way, allowing the weapon to be more easily concealed. Overall, this particular model of Bushmaster with the corresponding additional features made it an ideal urban sniping weapon. The manner in which Muhammad secured the weapon helped the two in their killings. They acquired the weapon when they stole it from a local gun shop, Bullseye Shooter Supply in Tacoma. The owner never realized the weapon was stolen and never connected the missing Bushmaster to Muhammad and Malvo until they were captured by police and the serial number on the gun was investigated. Because the rifle was stolen, there were no financial records or written documents connecting Muhammad to the rifle. Until Muhammad and Malvo were captured in physical possession of the weapon, there was no way to connect the missing Bushmaster with them. Constructing the perfect shooting platform. For quite some time, Muhammad planned to use a car as a sniper platform for the killings. More specifically, Muhammad planned to shoot from the trunk of a car as a concealed sniper hide. When looking for a car to use for their operations, Muhammad looked at several cars, but discounted them because the trunk was too small. Muhammad eventually focused on a blue 1990 four-door Chevrolet Caprice Classic, which he bought for only $250 from a dealership in New Jersey. From that day on, the Caprice with New Jersey tags NDA 217 became a mobile killing platform. In many ways, the Caprice Muhammad purchased was perfect for facilitating their killings. The car's color, a dark blue, did not stand out or attract undue attention. At night, this dark color could look like several colors, like a brown, gray, green, or red. In fact, one witness who saw the Caprice at the scene of a shooting stated the car's color was burgundy in color. From that point on, police were looking for a burgundy Caprice, not the blue one that was pulled over multiple times during the course of the killings. Since the Caprice was a big car with 4 doors and big seats, it was comfortable, which was important because Muhammad and Malvo essentially lived out of the car for 6 weeks. The big seats allowed one person to sleep in the back while the other person drove or kept a lookout. The car was also big enough to hold supplies like food, water, and duffel bags without getting in the way. Once Muhammad bought the Caprice, they modified it to suit their particular needs. First, they tinted all of the windows except the windshield. This tinting was an effective form of urban camouflage, concealing the people inside from anyone looking in. This meant people seeing the car near a shooting could not identify anyone inside the vehicle. Spectators did not know how many people were in the car, and they did not know what the people in the car were doing. This urban screening kept the occupants of the car anonymous and helped to conceal their activities inside the vehicle. Another important modification the two made was placing the rear seat on a hinge at the top of the seat. This was done so the person in the back seat could swing the back seat rest up, and then they could slide into the trunk. Since the back seat rest swung out, away from the trunk, the person in the trunk could then come back out of the trunk, swing the seat up, and go into the back seat again. With the car's tinted windows, a person could transition from the back seat to the trunk and back again without anyone notice them doing this. The hinged rear seat also meant a person could hide in the trunk, so when they were pulled over by police, the officer only saw a single person in the car, oblivious to the shooter hiding in the trunk. As stated before, the Caprice was a big car with a big trunk, a trunk big enough someone could lay down and shoot from inside. Since Muhammad planned to shoot from the trunk, he cut a small hole in the trunk above the license plate. This hole was just big enough to shoot through, but small enough it did not arouse suspicion. When the firing port was not in use, the two stuffed it up with a cloth. Shooting from the trunk through a small hole did several things. It hid the muzzle flash, hid any muzzle blast, and muffled the sound of the gunshot. Many people heard the gunshot but thought it was a car's backfire, a tire exploding, or something being dropped on the pavement. No one ever saw the muzzle flash from the weapon, making it almost impossible to associate the car with the shooting from visual cues alone. From a counter-forensic perspective, shooting from inside the car kept the immediate evidence from the shot in the confines of the trunk. The cartridges ejected from the Bushmaster bounced harmlessly off the inside walls of the trunk and stayed inside. Gun smoke did not escape the trunk, and neither did the smell of gunpowder. Only the tiny hole used as a gun port connected the forensic evidence inside of the trunk of the Caprice to the outside world. Due to this forensic isolation, no evidence was transferred from the trunk of the Caprice to the immediate area near the crime scene, helping Muhammad and Malvo remain anonymous. While the slightly beat-up Caprice was nondescript in almost every way, there were certain giveaways to the trained eye. In fact, some police referred to the Caprice as a felony car because it looked suspicious. Their Caprice was a former police car, which criminals were known to use because it gave them the illusion of authority. Also, the tinted windows made the car look like someone was trying to hide something, such as shooting someone with a sniper rifle. The car had an overall seedy quality to it, allowing it to blend into the low-rent surroundings, but it caught the eye of law enforcement personnel on many occasions. However, looking suspicious and being connected to a string of killings are two separate and distinct things. Financial backing and planning. Muhammad and Malvo could only conduct their killings if they had at least some income. While most people work a job for their money, Muhammad and Malvo shot and robbed people to secure their finances. Their biggest coup came on September 5th, 2002, when they shot and robbed the owner of a local store, stealing $3,500 in cash and a $1,400 laptop. This $3,500 went a long way, helping them to purchase their $250 Caprice. It bought them food and supplies and also paid for gas and phone calls. The two also tried using stolen credit cards, but all the cards were quickly closed out, so they never got more than a couple $100s worth of fraudulent credit card purchases. Because Muhammad and Malvo were dependent on stealing money to finance their killings, they increased their exposure to law enforcement. The two got away with several robberies, but committing these crimes alerted the police and risked the chance of capture during the act. During one armed robbery, police arrived on the scene and chased one person, probably Malvo, who was standing above the wounded victims, going through a purse. The gunmen got away but dropped their pistol during the pursuit, which later became incriminating evidence used against them. Sniper tactics. Muhammad and Malvo used a variety of successful tactics to confuse the police and continue their killing spree. One of their tactics was to spread their killings out over a large geographic area. This separation in distance made it difficult for police to connect one crime to another. For example, the police had no idea the people killing victims in D.C. area were the same ones who killed in Tacoma, Washington, in Tucson, Arizona, in Atlanta, Georgia, in Montgomery, Alabama, and Baton Rouge, Louisiana. There was no common thread between the victims, no obvious motives, and no way to link one single person to these different crimes. The geographic separation became a very real forensic gulf, helping keep the crimes unconnected. Also, the initial variety between different crimes kept Muhammad and Malvo from being connected to the separate murders. For example, Malvo shot their first victim with a Sig Sauer .45 caliber pistol in Tacoma. A month later, and 1,000 miles away, a man was shot with a rifle in Tucson. 5.5 months later, across the country in Maryland, their third victim was shot up close with a pistol and then robbed. Victim number 4 was shot 9 days later with a rifle. Victim number 5 was shot a day later with a pistol and was robbed. A week later, and hundreds of miles away, victim number 6 was shot with a pistol and robbed in Atlanta. This variety in time, in weapons, in locations, and in apparent motives, sometimes money was stolen, sometimes it was not, made connecting the different killings impossible in the absence of physical evidence and eyewitnesses. It was only after Muhammad and Malvo stopped varying their tactics to intentionally spread terror in D.C. that they set a pattern and the different killings became tied together. When Muhammad and Malvo planned to kill a victim, they were usually thorough. They would drive by the place of their intended attack a day prior and see if it met their needs. They would then conduct surveillance of the target area for a period of time, several hours if they were in a rush, or all night if they had more time. Regardless of how much time they had, they made sure they were aware of their surroundings and understood their immediate environment. It was easy for the two to stay abreast of police progress against them by simply watching local television, reading newspapers, and listening to the radio. Muhammad and Malvo then combined this knowledge of the situation with maps of the area, downloaded on their stolen laptop computer to plan their next killing. If they knew the police were focused on a specific area, they could plan a route to be less vigilant location and find a good target with close access to local highways for an immediate escape. Even though they were not from the eastern seaboard and had no previous knowledge of the greater D.C. area, their map software made up for these deficiencies. When shooting from their car, Muhammad and Malvo faced their car away from their intended victim with the trunk of the car facing the target. After they made their shot, they slowly drove away in order to avoid suspicion. They intentionally appeared to look calm, as the screeching of tires or erratic driving would surely catch a witness' attention and stick in their memory. This calm, cool demeanor worked for Muhammad and Malvo many times. Their caprice was observed by numerous witnesses at different crime scenes, but investigators never thought there was a connection. Muhammad and Malvo did not always fire their rifle from inside the trunk of their car. On at least 4 separate occasions, they shot their victims from adjacent woods. In these cases, they used walkie-talkies where one person with the car kept watch and called in situational updates to the shooter concealed in the woods. As these incidents revealed, the two could operate away from their car and use whatever surrounding terrain was available to facilitate their killings. This departure from shooting from the vehicle made the police's job more difficult because it broke the expected pattern. What good was it looking for a specific vehicle if the snipers were shooting from the woods or from a building? Importantly, when Muhammad and Malvo's motives changed from killing for revenge, or money, or testing their tactics, to intentionally spreading terror, They no longer benefited from the variety in time, distance, and weapons to hide their motives and to hide the connections between their killings. Spreading terror meant they had to kill numerous people in a restricted geographic area to show they could not be stopped by the authorities. While most of their killings were under the cover of darkness at night or in the early morning, some were committed in broad daylight in the presence of scores of potential witnesses. At least 3 of the shootings were done within eyesight, hearing, or close proximity to a police officer or a police station. At least 1 police officer was in Malvo's sights, but Malvo chose to shoot someone else nearby. Part of their methodology of spreading terror was intentionally making shots in proximity to law enforcement personnel, showing the communities the police were powerless to save them. It was impossible for the police to protect everyone because there was a never-ending array of targets for the 2 snipers to choose from, with millions of people living within a 30-minute drive in every direction of Washington, D.C. In this dense urban environment, Muhammad and Malvo ensured a steady opportunity of victims by concentrating on public places like gas stations, store parking lots, restaurants, schools, and liquor stores. People needed gas, had to eat food, and wanted liquor. All the 2 had to do was stake out one of the 1,000 different gas stations, and they knew they would have an endless number of human targets to shoot. Liquor stores and gas stations were the equivalent of salt licks for deer hunters. An integral part of their terror campaign in D.C. area was how they killed their victims. They intended to kill, not wound their victims, and they usually tried to kill their victims with a headshot. 4 of the victims shot with the Bushmaster rifle were shot in the head, while others were not because Muhammad or Malvo could not acquire the target and had to settle for a different part of the body. If they had to shoot the body, they tried to get a kill shot. 5 victims received fatal wounds to their vital organs, heart, asserting aorta, pulmonary vein. 2 had their spinal cords severed, and 1 was shot in the neck. Others were shot in the lower back, and some in the abdomen or stomach. More of these victims lived because of the less than fatal locations. A reason why Muhammad and Malvo were able to kill for as long as they did, under intense scrutiny by the police, was their effective cover stories backed up by their demeanor. When questioned by local residents as they were parked somewhere, Muhammad would say he was traveling with his son from New Jersey and just wanted to get some rest. Since Muhammad was always polite and calm, people believed him. Even when questioned by police on several different occasions, the snipers remained calm, presenting a plausible story as to why they were in the area. Since the police had to deal with millions of potential suspects, as long as Muhammad and Malvo's stories seemed credible, backed up by a relaxed behavior, there were no red flags to single them out. An additional piece of Muhammad and Malvo's strategy was overloading local law enforcement officials. For instance, on October 3, 2002, they killed 5 different people in a 14-hour period in Montgomery County, Maryland. Malvo later said these killings in Montgomery County were intentional, knowing the police could not handle this volume of activity. With these killings, the police were forced to isolate and investigate 5 separate crime scenes, each one devouring scores of investigators, police, and security personnel. From a command and control perspective, Muhammad and Malvo hoped to overwhelm the authorities' ability to coordinate so many different investigative operations simultaneously. This part of their plan was effective because after those 5 killings, they managed to shoot another 7 people for the next 3 weeks. The urban snapshot. Muhammad and Malvo escaped detection by nearby witnesses on a dozen different occasions due to the nature of the urban environment they operated in. First, they drove a nondescript car, just one of hundreds of thousands in the area. Even at the crime scenes, there were scores of cars in the immediate area, and the slightly beat-up Caprice was just one of many possible shooting platforms. When a shot was made, the nearby people had a second or 2 to observe the surrounding urban terrain before Muhammad and Malvo calmly drove off. At the time of the shot, witnesses had a momentary urban snapshot of their surroundings. The more people, buildings, and cars that were around the crime scene, the harder it was for witnesses to narrow it down to a possible suspect. There were scores of possibilities at every shooting scene, and if the witnesses happened to focus on the wrong object of interest, they missed the true culprits. Since much of the urban environment was made up of cars, the urban terrain was in a state of constant change, and there was no way to freeze everyone at the scene of a shooting. Either a person picked out the Caprice instantly, or that part of the momentary urban snapshot was lost forever when it drove off. The forensics battlefield. In order to catch the two snipers, thousands of law enforcement personnel were employed in some capacity. The Montgomery County Police took the lead in trying to catch Muhammad and Malvo, accompanied by a host of other agencies like the FBI, DEA, ATF, and the Maryland and Virginia State Police. While there were plenty of people on hand to help track down the shooters, it was a monumental task trying to coordinate between the separate agencies, all with different jurisdictions and capabilities. One thing authorities did was establish a hotline for tips in order to get the community involved and have the people on the streets act as the eyes and ears of law enforcement. However, the dense urban area the snipers worked in created complications. Once the hotlines were open, authorities were deluged with a flood of calls, overwhelming the authorities' ability to effectively process every citizen with something to contribute. Eventually, authorities set up at least 82 lines to handle the thousands of tips they got every day. In one case, the authorities found themselves swamped with 30,000 tips in a single day. One lady working the FBI tip line received 500 calls on a single shift and actually interrupted Malvo when he called, redirecting him to another number. Malvo later said they personally called the FBI hotline 4 times to discuss their demands, but could never get through to someone in charge. Ironically, just as Muhammad and Malvo hid among the sea of cars on the streets as they killed people, they got lost among the flood of phone calls swamping the various hotlines. Fueling this human crush of helpful tips was a $50,000 reward Montgomery County offered, leading to the arrest of the 2 snipers. As the bodies continued to pile up, another $50,000 was added to the pot, and then another $100,000. A total of $200,000 dangled before the nose of any citizen who could bring the killings to an end by turning in Muhammad and Malvo. The more money offered, the more calls the police received. While they had no hope of following up every call, the police followed up hundreds of the most promising leads. Police staked out and followed suspects, confiscated guns, fired the guns to compare their ballistics, and then gave the guns back when they did not match. The police's job was at times hindered due to a variety of false leads reported through law enforcement channels. For example, on more than one occasion, a white box truck was seen near the scene of the shooting, and precious manpower was spent stopping and searching hundreds of these vehicles. In fact, there were over 70,000 white box trucks and white vans in Maryland alone. Since people became focused on searching for a particular type of vehicle that was not the shooters, Muhammad and Malvo continued to cruise the streets in their modified dark blue Caprice killing machine, invisible to the public and law enforcement. Another problem went beyond mistaken identities, intentionally misreports. In one instance, a supposed eyewitness stated they saw a man with an AK-47 getting into a cream-colored Chevy Astro van near the scene of a shooting. This report further confirmed authorities should focus on a white truck or van instead of the blue Caprice repeatedly seen or stopped near the crime scene. This report about the man with an AK-47 later proved to be completely fabricated, and the eyewitness admitted to making the story up. Eventually, the police got a break when they followed up a phone call from Robert Holmes, an acquaintance of John Muhammad from Tacoma, Washington. The police questioned Holmes on October 22nd, although he called 5 days earlier, saying he thought he knew who the sniper was. This was unsurprising, considering Holmes was just one of 80,000 mostly erroneous leads. Besides, what could someone from Washington State possibly know about killings happening on the East Coast? In retrospect, the groundwork for Muhammad and Malvo's capture was laid almost a year before. After all, it was Muhammad's previous criminal and violence-prone behavior, witnessed by Holmes, that led him to call the hotline. The authorities quickly found out Holmes knew quite a bit about the snipers. This proved to be their demise. The 2 snipers were only able to operate under the noses of the people and police when they were anonymous. Once the police had 2 names, the game was up. These names led to social security numbers, pictures, and detailed records of both Muhammad and Malvo. Soon the police also had to make, model, and description of the car the 2 were driving. In a little more than 24 hours after talking to Holmes, Muhammad and Malvo were spotted by a local citizen and captured by police in the early morning hours of October 24, 2002, at an isolated rest stop in Maryland. Once Muhammad and Malvo's anonymity was stripped away from them, they were sitting ducks. Then it was relatively easy for the authorities to connect Muhammad and Malvo to most of the 23 people they shot. It was a simple task for the authorities to convict the two because Muhammad and Malvo were so forensically sloppy over the course of their killings. Part of this forensic sloppiness was a magazine Malvo left behind with his fingerprints on it at the scene of a killing in Alabama. Another crime scene had a map with both Muhammad and Malvo's fingerprints on it. The police also found a small caliber pistol Malvo dropped at the scene of another shooting in Alabama. This pistol was then connected to a number of other shootings the two committed. At another shooting scene, the two left behind a duffel bag they used to conceal and transport their rifle in. This was an unintentional mistake because Muhammad was later seen buying a new duffel bag. The sloppiness continued. Muhammad left handwritten notes to the police on a tarot card and store-bought stationery, and he was even caught on a surveillance camera entering the store to buy the stationery. Malvo also left behind DNA samples on a bag of raisins he ate at one of their sniper hides in the woods. At several locations, Muhammad and Malvo left behind expended shell casings after the shootings. To top it off, Muhammad and Malvo were caught with the Bushmaster rifle, lying in the trunk of their car, they used to shoot a majority of their victims with. The Bushmaster was then connected to the expended cartridges left behind and the actual bullets taken from the bodies of their victims. With all this evidence, it was an open and shut case. Muhammad and Malvo simply lacked the forensic discipline, the counter-forensic discipline, to get away with their crimes. This is not really surprising, since it was their intent all along to keep killing until they were either caught or killed. From South Arma to Washington, D.C. to Baghdad. These killings show the kind of terror two trained and determined people can inflict on an unarmed community. The sniper's caprice was the perfect urban sniper platform, allowing them to make repeated shots in broad daylight in the presence of numerous potential witnesses and even police officers. As long as the snipers' identities remained unknown, they were impervious to law enforcement's efforts. They were impervious because they were swallowed up by the dense urban environment that forced police to try and find a single person and a single vehicle out of a pool of millions, which was the equivalent of finding a needle in a haystack. Malvo later claimed Muhammad got the idea of shooting from a car and a training manual written by the Irish Republican Army. The author has been unable to locate such a manual. This may be true, since we know years earlier in the 1990s an Irish Republic Army sniper team used a similar methodology, firing from the back of a car to target British soldiers in Northern Ireland. Ironically, while Muhammad and Malvo targeted American citizens, their urban sniping methodology was copied by insurgent snipers in Iraq and used against American soldiers. Instead of targeting and terrorizing unarmed civilians, these insurgent snipers targeted heavily armed soldiers positioned at checkpoints and guard towers. These guerrilla snipers also shot from inside vehicles in broad daylight in dense urban areas and got away with it. Every successful guerrilla sniping experience is subjected to being learned by new generations of snipers. Muhammad and Malvo were just one link in a chain of sniper methodology started in Northern Ireland, imported to the United States, and then exported to Iraqi guerrillas. General descriptions of the shootings. Victim number 1, February 16th, 2002, 7 p.m., Tacoma, Washington. 21-year-old woman, shot in her house, hit in the head, and died from a .45 pistol. The shooter was on the porch, point blank. Victim number 2, March 19th, 2002, 12:30 a.m., estimate, Tucson, Arizona. 60-year-old man shot on a golf course, hit in the back, and died from a rifle. The shooter was in the nearby woods, 100 meters away. All distances are estimated in meters. Victim number 3, September 5th, 2002, 10:30 p.m., Clinton, Maryland. 55-year-old man, shot in a parking lot, hit in the upper body, and lived from a .22 pistol. The shooter was outside, firing point blank. Victim number 4, September 14th, 2002, 10:10 p.m., Silver Spring, Maryland. 22-year-old man, shot in parking lot, hit in the lower back, and lived by a .223 rifle. The sniper was in a car 50 meters away. Victim number 5, September 15th, 2002, 10 p.m., Brandywine, Maryland. 32-year-old man, shot in front of a liquor store, hit in the abdomen by a .22 pistol. The shooter was outside point-blank range. Victim number 6, September 21st, 2002, 12:16 p.m., Atlanta, Georgia. 41-year-old man shot in front of a liquor store, hit in the back of the head and killed by a .22 pistol. The shooter was outside at point-blank range. Victim number 7, September 21st, 2002, 7:20 p.m., Montgomery, Alabama. 52-year-old woman shot in front of a liquor store, hit in the spinal cord and killed by a .223 rifle. The shooter was in a car 50 meters away. Victim number 8, September 21st, 2002, 7:20 p.m., Montgomery, Alabama. 24-year-old woman shot in front of a liquor store, hit in the back of the neck and lived by a .223 rifle. The shooter was in a car 50 meters away. Victim number 9, September 23rd, 2002, 6:40 p.m., Baton Rouge, Louisiana. 45-year-old woman shot in a parking lot, hit in the head and killed by a .223 rifle. Sniper was in a car 50 meters away. Victim number 10, October 2nd, 2002, 5:20 p.m., Aspen Hill, Maryland. Store window shot out, no one hit. The shooter was in a car, probably a botched hit. Victim number 11, October 2, 2002, 6:02 p.m., Wheaton, Maryland. 55-year-old man shot in a parking lot, hit in the spinal cord and died by a .223 rifle. The sniper was in a car 50 meters away. Victim number 12, October 3rd, 2002, 7:41 a.m., White Flint, Maryland. 39-year-old shot mowing the lawn, hit in the back and died from a .223 rifle. The sniper was in a car 75 meters away. Victim 13, October 3rd, 2002, 8:12 a.m., Aspen Hill, Maryland. 54-year-old man shot while pumping gas, hit in the chest and died from a .223 rifle. Sniper was in a car 75 meters away. Victim 14, October 3rd, 2002, 8:37 a.m., Silver Springs, Maryland. 34-year-old woman shot sitting on a bench, hit in the head and died from a .223 rifle. Sniper was in a car 50 meters away. Victim 15, October 3rd, 2002, 9:58 a.m., Kensington, Maryland. 25-year-old woman at a gas station, hit in the chest and died by a .223 rifle. Sniper was in a car 50 meters away. Victim 16, October 3rd, 2002, 9:20 a.m., Washington, D.C. 72-year-old man shot crossing a street, hit in the upper chest and died. Sniper was in a car 75 meters away. Victim number 17, October 4th, 2002, 2:27 p.m., Fredericksburg, Virginia. 43-year-old woman shot in a parking lot, hit in the lower back and lived by a .223 rifle. The sniper was in a car 50 meters away. Victim number 18, October 7th, 2002, 8:09 a.m., Bowie, Maryland. 13-year-old boy in front of a school, hit in the abdomen and lived from a .223 rifle. The sniper was in the woods 100 meters away. Victim number 19, October 9th, 2002, 8:10 p.m., Manassas, Virginia. 53-year-old man shot at a gas station, hit in the head and died from a .223 rifle. The sniper was in a car 50 meters away. Victim number 20, October 11th, 2002, 9:28 a.m., Massapequa, Virginia. 53-year-old man shot at a gas station, hit in the chest and died by a .223 rifle. Sniper was in a car 50 meters away. Victim 21, October 14th, 2002, 9:15 p.m., Falls Church, Virginia. 47-year-old woman shot in the parking lot, hit in the head and died by a .223 rifle. Sniper was in a car 50 meters away. Victim number 22, October 19th, 2002, 7:59 p.m., Ashland, Virginia. 37-year-old man shot in a parking lot, hit in the stomach and lived from a .223 rifle. Sniper was in a car 50 meters away. Victim 23, October 22nd, 2002, 5:56 a.m., Aspen Hill Road, Maryland. 35-year-old man shot inside a bus, hit in the stomach and died from a .223 rifle by a sniper in the woods 75 meters away.